Okay, so this is part 2 of the integumentary system, and now we're going to look at the various accessory structures associated with that system. We have the hair and hair follicles. These are accessory structures of the integumentary system. Hairs are non-living keratinized structures. They are produced by hair follicles. They will project above the skin surface everywhere except the sides and soles of the feet, palms of the hand, sides of the fingers and toes, the lips, and portions of the external genitalia. The hair follicle structure will project into the dermis and usually into the hypodermis. The walls contain all cell layers found in the epidermis. The epithelium at the base of the follicle forms a cap over the hair papilla, the connective tissue that contains the capillaries and nerves. The hair matrix will surround the hair papilla, and it contains epithelial stem cells, and the cells will divide and push daughter cells towards the surface. Now the hair structure, as hair cells move towards the surface, they become keratinized and die. The point of keratinization and death is about halfway to the skin surface and marks the boundary between the hair root and the hair shaft. The hair root is the portion that anchors the hair into the skin, and the hair shaft is the portion of hair that we see on the surface. The hair shaft will actually have 3 layers of dead keratinized cells: the cuticle, which is the surface layer; the cortex, which is the middle layer, also contains hard keratin; and the medulla, which makes up the core. This contains soft, flexible keratin. And here you can see those various 3 layers of the hair. Here you can see the hair follicle, and this would be the hair root right here. So the hair growth cycle grows for 2 to 5 years at about 0.3 millimeters per day. The follicle becomes inactive for the same time frame. When new growth cycle begins, the follicle produces new hair. Old hair gets pushed to the surface and will shed. Different types of hair in various parts of the body have different growth cycles, and the growth cycles can be affected by general health, hormone levels, and exposure to certain chemicals. For example, lack of protein can actually cause hair to fall out. Now, the functions of your hair is to protect the scalp from UV radiation. It also provides insulation for the skull, and it prevents entry of foreign particles into the nose, eyes, and ears. It will provide early warning system to prevent injury due to sensory fibers at the base of the hair follicles. It will also respond to fear, rage, or cold temperature by standing up to erect position via contraction of the rectopilli muscles, causing goosebumps. Now the hair color, this is differences due to the type and the amount of melanin from the melanocytes. Hair color will vary from black to blonde, and it's genetically determined and influenced by hormones and environmental factors. The pigment production will decline with age, causing gray or white hair. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the types of glands that we find on the skin. There are 2 types of exocrine glands: sebaceous glands and sweat glands. Sebaceous glands are also called oil glands. They discharge oily lipid secretion called sebum into the hair follicles through holoquin secretion. Remember, we talked about holoquin secretion in the prior chapter there. Sebum will inhibit growth of bacteria, lubricate the hair, and conditions the skin. The sebaceous follicles will discharge sebum directly onto the skin, face, back, chest, nipples, and external genitalia. And here you can see the formation of the sebaceous gland. Sebaceous glands are sensitive to changes in concentrations of sex hormones. The secretions will accelerate at puberty. And as a result, acne, which is due to a blocked sebaceous ducts, causes inflammation and a raised pimple. Your sweat glands, on the other hand, these are called sudoriferous glands, and this includes 2 types: apocrine or eccrine, or another term for eccrine is merocrine sweat glands. Here we can see the sweat gland right here, and we can see the little duct, and then we see the pore where the sweat would be released on the surface of the skin. Apocrine sweat glands become active at puberty. They secrete into the hair follicle in armpits, around nipples, and in the pubic region. Although called apocrine, now known that they use American secretion. The secretion is sticky, cloudy, and potentially odorous. Sweat is a food source for bacteria on the skin, increasing odor, and typically deodorants are used to mask this odor. Eccrine sweat glands, these are also called American sweat glands. You have a coiled tubular structure, secretes watery perspiration directly onto the surface of the skin. These are very numerous with high numbers found on the soles and the palms. Sweat is essentially 99% water. It contains electrolytes, urea, and organic nutrients, and its functions is to cool the body through evaporation. There are various modified sweat glands that we find throughout the body. Two in particular, mammary glands. These are structurally related to the apocrine sweat glands, and they secrete milk. You also have ceruminous glands. These are located in the passageway of the external ear, and secretions will combine to form a sebaceous gland secretion to form cerumen or earwax. Okay, now we're going to talk about nails. Nails are keratinized epithelial cells. They protect the dorsal surfaces of the tips of the fingers and toes. The visible nail body is a dense mass of dead keratinized cells. It is recessed beneath the surrounding epithelium, and it's bordered by the lateral nail folds. Your nail bed is a deeper level of the epidermis covered by the nail body. You also have the nail root. This is the epithelial fold that is not visible on the surface, but it is the site of where nails get produced. The cuticle, this is the portion of the stratum corneum of the fold. It extends over the exposed nail, and it's close to the root. The lanula, this is a pale crescent that is near the nail root. And here we can see those various structures. Okay, and that is it for the structures of the integumentary system. Now, unfortunately, skin does get damaged, and skin regeneration occurs because the stem cells of the epithelium and the connective tissue can undergo pretty rapid cell division, and that will end up replacing any lost or damaged skin tissue. There are 4 phases that we see with skin regeneration. First is the inflammation phase, then the migration phase, proliferation, and then the scarring. During the inflammation phase, mast cells, which are white blood cells, released at bleeding injury site will trigger an inflammatory response. The result is increased blood flow to the region and increased number of phagocytes. Phagocytes are white blood cells that will eat up any bacteria or pathogens, but it will also take care of any cell debris. The migration phase, this is a blood clot or scab forms at the surface to restrict the entry of microorganisms. Most of the clot is in the network's fibrin. The stratum basal cells will migrate along the wound edges and divide, replacing missing cells. Phagocytes will clear the debris and pathogens. If the wound covers extensive area or involves a region of thin skin, the dermis must begin to repair before the epithelium can cover surface. The granulation tissue forms in the deeper tissues, and this is a combination of blood clot, fibroblasts, and extensive capillary networks. Here we can see the inflammation phase, and then we can see the migration phase there where we're forming that blood clot. The proliferation phase, this is the deeper parts of the clot dissolve, number of capillaries will start to decline, and the fibroblasts have formed an extensive meshwork of collagen fibers. And then finally, the scarring phase, the scab is shed, the epidermis is complete, the shallow depression marks the injury site, fibroblasts create a fibrous non-cellular scar tissue. And the reason for the scar tissue is that it's actually built up with extra fibers, and this is actually made up to be a little bit more of a tougher tissue at that point. Remember that tissue was damaged, so the skin is sort of replacing it with a little bit more of a tougher fill there. And here we can see the perforation and scarring phases. This is a keloid or scar. that can form or result. This usually happens if the wound is pretty deep. Other damage to the skin would be a burn. Burns result from exposure of the skin to heat, radiation, electrical shock, or strong chemicals. Essentially, a burn is damage to the skin, the layers of the skin. The severity depends on the depth of the tissues and the total area affected. Skin function is affected by burns. You can end up in fluid and electrolyte imbalance. Thermoregulation and protection from infection can all be affected if you have damage to that skin. So first-degree burn, this is only on the epidermal layer, causes erythema or redness from the inflammation, and this would be an example of sunburn. Second-degree burn, this is the entire epidermis and part of the dermis is damaged. It causes blistering, pain, and swelling. Some scar tissues may also form as a result of a second-degree burn. Third-degree burns, both the epidermis and dermis are destroyed. Damage may even extend into the hypodermis. Sensory nerve endings are destroyed, which means usually you don't have any pain sensation. And it cannot repair themselves because you have no skin there to regenerate. It has been completely destroyed. So usually what has to happen is you have to have skin grafting in order to repair this. Okay, here you can see the three different types of burns, and the gray is just indicating the damage that we see. The rules of nines is used to estimate the burn area. Body surface is divided into multiples of 9 percentages, and you can see that here. And they sort of try to determine how much of your skin is damaged, and realistically, if any more than like 10% of the body is going to contain third-degree burns, that could be very fatal, just because of the extent of the damage. Okay, and that is it for this.